Hi, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back. Stella's like, she knows I'm on the camera. She's gonna hide. Come here. I see your tail wagging. Oh, she's happy. We're working on the boat today. This is the two-stroke turbo channel, in case you're confused or mixed up. There's a lot of videos to watch on YouTube, I realize that. We're gonna do a water pump. It's called the raw water pump replacement on our Alpha 1 Mercruiser outdrive. I haven't seen a lot of videos about this on YouTube, at least very good ones, so I'm gonna go through it with you. First of all, what you got to do is you got to change the oil. There is a oil fill or oil vent screw up here. You got to remove that, and you need to do it with a pretty good sized like impact driver so you don't strip it out. It's a stainless steel screw with an O-ring on it, and there's also one way down here, right in there. Can you see that? Just turn my light on. And once you got the oil drained, make sure there's not a lot of water in your oil, which there's not. It takes 90 weight. It takes Quicksilver 90 weight is what I use. It's Gear Lube. The lower drain plug has a magnet on it to collect any debris. Make sure there's no magnets on there. Make sure there's no metal on your magnet. And the top one does not have a magnet, and they should both have O-rings. So you remove those. That's the first step. Get the oil draining out of your outdrive. And then what we're going to do is we're going to loosen the bolt that's in this hole here, which will take off this magnesium cover, or they call it a sacrificial anode, I believe is what that's called. Keeps the outdrive from corroding. And there are bolts here and on the other side. And the lower outdrive is going to separate with a long shaft in it, and it's connected to a water pump, and I'll show you how that works. It's pretty ingenious, actually. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get a 3/8 Allen. You stick it down in the hole there, and you can see I'm wiggling my sacrificial anode. That will release that. And there are two more bolts that I forgot about. There's one here and one here. And I think I already mentioned these two. So there's 4 on the main part of the leg, and then this one out on the tip. So I'm going to loosen this up, get the anode off, and then I think there's a bolt underneath there. We'll see. So once you get your sacrificial anode off, there's another hex screw underneath here. I believe this is a 5/16. It's something a little smaller than a 3/8. And you'll need to loosen that up. You don't want to forget about this. You'll break your outdrive. Try to manhandle it off. So get that loosened up. Forgot one bolt. There's one bolt way right here. Turn my light on. See this one back here? You got to get that one. If you don't, you'll break your outdrive. So there's 5. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, actually 6. 6 bolts to hold the lower leg. Now you can see that I'm getting ready to drop this. These are all 5/8. I got my screwdriver, and you can see the separation between the lower outdrive and the upper. Lower drive is heavy. Set it on a nice soft blanket. You've got a few components here. This is your water pump. This is your drive shaft. There's supposed to be an O-ring there, which fell off inside the upper drive, and your shift shaft right here. So you'll notice there's an O-ring there. And there's another O-ring someplace else. We'll figure it out here in a second. But you want to look up in there and make sure that your water transfer tube is in good shape and that there's clear access back up to the drive shaft. Looks good in there. All right, we're a little further along. I moved my lower drive over here to basically a jig on my lift to hold it up while I work on it. And I can already tell this rubber deal is completely cracked. That's a seal that's on the top of the pump. That's got to come off. And I also removed the oil O-ring, which was here. It looks a little bad. So get yourself comfortable. This is your water outlet tube. I'm expecting to find a pretty knackered water pump in there. I've been experiencing a little, not overheating, but it's been running a little hotter than normal after I shut it off on the river. And I think that some of my rubber impeller blades have delaminated or broken or come apart. Okay, it's the moment of truth here. Let's pull this old rubber ring off. That is cracked in a million places. And then we're going to pull the housing off. Oh, it actually doesn't look that bad. I thought it'd be a lot worse. That's kind of crazy. I figured it'd be missing a few veins, but it's pretty good. We're going to put a new one in anyways. It's been about 10 years. Once you got everything stripped off your drive, you have all the used parts laying out. You need to match them up with the correct new parts because the kit comes with a bunch of extras. So I've got all the plates and gaskets identically, and this is much better than this. This had a torn gasket, so that might have been leaking or bleeding off raw water. The impeller, surprisingly, is actually intact. The blades are a little cracked, but in relatively good shape, as well as the housing. So I'm impressed that it's lasted that long, but we're going to replace it with new ones anyways. Just be sure you go slow and you put it back together the way you took it apart. Use a little marine grease in your water pump housing, grease it up a little bit, and you got to make sure that the keyway lines up with the keyway on your pump so that when you put this back together, it slides together and is locked. Okay, we're ready for reassembly. We have our O-ring back up on our shaft. We have our large O-ring down low on the shaft. Put a little marine grease on both the water pipe connection, also the shifter shaft, and of course I greased up the inside of the impeller so we can't start it up dry. Everything actually looked better than I thought. Oh, I put a little bit of a new O-ring there, but I put a little dab of silicone on there so it doesn't wiggle away. This unit is heavy and I'm going to try to insert it myself, and there's a couple things. You got to get the shift shaft to line up. I put some grease on that. It doesn't want to stay, it keeps falling out. I've got to line up the tube and then also the shaft. So there's three major things. Also, you want to seal your oil hole. So there's some things to consider. All have to work right. So glad that I never run salt water because everything is so nice. Okay, now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of our outdrive repair. Trying to put the outdrive back on, and you can see I've got a gap all the way along there. I'm just not strong enough to put it back together. I don't know what, I'm gonna ruin my back. So I'm doing it neutral. You can do it in drive, but my shift shaft is pretty sloppy and loose, the connection. So I'm able to reach in there with some long needle nose pliers and I can adjust it, find neutral, find forward, find reverse, find what you want, so it all to go together. So what I've been doing is been wiggling this up slowly and figuring out how all the shafts go back together. You don't want to over tighten or break anything or stress it out. So I've got this lower outer part with the nuts on underneath, just enough. And now I'm going to take the strap off, wiggle the whole thing, and see if I can get these nuts started and then pull the whole thing together very carefully, not with a gun, but just feeling it as it goes together. It's kind of like a transmission when you're doing a clutch. Sometimes there takes a little extra effort to put together. So that's what this compilation of ratchet straps is doing. I've got one going to the front and one going around to the back. Okay, so a combination of my ratchet straps, one around the back, kind of the toe or the foot, and one from beneath the prop to the front. And once you can get the bolts threads started, then you can get a nut on there and you can pull it all together. So you'll get the nut in there and get it on there. Now I'll do it in a second when I got two hands. You also have to check back underneath here. I've got my shift shaft held with a zip tie. See how that's engaged right up there? That's got to be engaged. And then it can be in neutral or forward, and you can play around. You can see I've got some marks on there from the vice grips to get that aligned. It's hard getting those three or four things all aligned. You got your water pump tube, you've got your drive line, and you got your shift shaft, and you also have an oil seal on one side. This just helps. Helps me tremendously. I can use that, and then once I wiggle this with it, tension on it, it just slowly pulls it together, and then I get the nuts on. So once you get it together, you still need to make sure that you've got forward, reverse, and neutral the way you did before. So let's get our nuts on there. I can see that the tops of that's showing, so I should be able to pull it up. Okay, so once your gap starts getting narrower, you want to slowly tighten these up side by side, not with a machine. You want to feel each one, get it just snug, and then move to the next one. You do not want to over tighten. I cannot emphasize enough, if you crack your outdrive, it's your own fault. You will cry. And same thing with these. All you kind of do like a head gasket. You do like a circle, and you just keep tightening slowly until they get snug. Nice and slow. Take your time. Not in any rush here. If you hear any cracking or popping or binding or something gets stuck, take it back apart and fix it. Before you get it all back together, before you put your gear oil in, you want to make sure you've got your forward, neutral, reverse selector right. Right now it's in neutral, both ways, spins. If you go to the boat controls, you should be able to pop it forward. Just first click, idle forward, and it should lock one direction. Locked. And same thing with reverse. You should be able to pull it back to neutral and then into reverse, and it should lock the other direction, and it does. And then to recheck, pop it back in neutral right there, and it should spin both ways, and it does. I think we did it. The next thing I like to do is hook up my water with my ear muffs, or my water muffs, and let's see if it goes into gear. I haven't put the gear oil in yet. I'm just going to turn it on. Make sure it's in neutral, and it is. Put it in drive. Heard it clack. It's in drive. Back to neutral. Neutral. Back into reverse. Heard it clack. It's in reverse. Ah, that's nice. Now we'll put some gear oil in it and tighten up all our bolts. Make sure everything is good. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the last thing you want to do is you want to pump oil into your outdrive. I recommend the Quicksilver Mercruiser oil, and you're going to pump through this little hole that's dripping right here, focused on there, until the oil runs out of there. So it's probably going to take a quart, possibly a quart and a half. I don't think I could have made more of a mess here. Spilled more, I think, than I put in. No, it took 2 quarts pumping through the bottom. Finally we got something to run out the top oil, oil air vent is what they call it, and it should be full. I might top it up later. Almost got 2 quarts in, just a hair under, so I think that's good. We're ready to hit the water. Ready to hit the water. Let's go. It's hot outside. Okay, if anything that I said or did during this video didn't make sense, you can always refer to a Mercruiser shop manual. These are available. Mine happens to be a 1988. Pretty sure I got the right one. This is a great reference. It tells you all about how to take the lower part of the outdrive off for a water pump change, And yeah, I'm surprised that the water pump wasn't that bad. The last one that I took out of this boat, probably 10 or 15 years ago, these were all stuck in the water pump. All the vanes had wore off. So I don't know if I have another issue, but I do seem to get the engine a little hot after towing for a while and turning it off. So we'll see. It could be just the river water is warm. But we're gonna go hit the water shortly, clean up, and enjoy the boat. Enjoy your boat. They're fun.